Hi everybody and welcome to another piano video here on the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. We are back into a little bit of software. I'm going to check one off the list that I always intended to do but never got around to it. And with the kind of arrival of Hammers and Waves, the instrument pack in my lap, and diving right in and getting to know it. Obviously they have an electric piano component to this. It's basically a Rhodes Suitcase 73, and it reminded me that this was something that I'd wanted to do 6 months ago, 8 months ago when we were doing pianos. Most gigging piano players, whether or not you're, out there 7 days a week, or it's something you only do very, very intermittently, more as a hobby, or anything halfway in between, acoustic piano is obviously not the only sound that you deal with when you're out playing with bands, when you're out, interacting with other musicians. Often piano players are expected to just sort of know that there's settings where Rhodes, which is kind of that electric, non-digital electric piano sound from the 70s, or I guess best known during the 70s, is more called for, and that often comes when you are playing along with certain pop, R&B, Motown, you name it. Rhodes is just a better fit a lot of the time, and that's this sound here. We all know that sound. But I've never really dove in to the software side of this, and there's a lot of great software VSTs that deliver astonishingly realistic Rhodes playing experiences. And we had some of them right here. So this is a video where we're going to compare all of the Rhodes emulators, Rhodes plugins, Rhodes VSTs that I've loved along the way, along with the newest that's come to our attention here with the Hammers and Waves electric piano instrument pack. And we're just going to compare them, see what they sound like, what's delivering the highest level of realism, what's most fun to play, what's easiest to control and manipulate, the whole bit. And so the four we're going to be looking at are going to be, as I just mentioned, the Suitcase 73 from Hammers and Waves. We're going to be looking at Keyscape. Of course, you can't do a Rhodes anything VST without talking about Keyscape. We're going to be looking at Pianoteq 7 because they've got a Rhodes emulator in there. And then just for good measure, and because I've used it a bunch, more out of necessity than anything, is the built-in Logic instrument, the Classic Suitcase Rhodes instrument that's included with Logic. Because you know what? It ain't so bad either. And we're just going to go through each of them, talk about what they offer, give you a playing sample, and give you some final conclusions. So thank you so much for joining us for today's video. If it is the first time that you have joined us here on the channel, thank you so much for tuning in, and hit that subscribe button. This channel is a ton of fun. I mean, it's not just me for sure. I'm not the most fun. The commenters, the community, there are so many people around the world who are every day contributing amazing ideas, feedback, thoughts on these instruments, other suggestions for people to go and check out. I just love what this has become, what it's turned into, and I hope that you will become our latest, newest, greatest member of that community. So hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so that we can see you back for other videos. We're always coming out with videos. Let's get started first with this Hammers and Waves Suitcase 73. This is part of a 10 instrument pack. You can split it up or buy it all as one pack. They have the acoustic piano thing, the electric piano thing, prepared piano, chime piano. So we're taking a look at the electric piano because this is the Suitcase 73 that they've used. Now, we've also done a dive into the acoustic side of things where we talked about their Hammers and Waves, the whole engine behind these plugins. And there's very little modification between the engine as it appears with the Suitcase 73 versus with the acoustic piano. And so what it is a nicely sampled, a very, very well sampled Suitcase 73 Rhodes. But then it's feeding into this modulation synthesis engine, which allows for this a massive amount of variety of textures which are derived from the Rhodes sound. Now I'll give you a couple of examples. So here's the default, you already heard it. And you've got some options to modify that sound without getting into anything crazy or unauthentic. You have this sort of mix back and forth between amp only, which I actually kind of like having it almost entirely on amp, because you get that airiness of having a microphone picking up through the amp. There's a little bit of hiss. I like it. The DI, very warm, very intimate sound. So I mean, you can play around with whatever, you know, the mix that your ear likes the most. Color. Got like a tonal shift, you've got a shaper, octave, and then you can send to the Swarm engine, the Fractals engine, which are kind of fancier versions of, let's call them arpeggiators and you know, feedback delay type of thing. In space, you have the ability to mix in just core note tone, release, resonance, you know, hammer sound. So these are extra kind of secondary tones that can get added onto there. I really like turning the mechanical sound up on that quite a bit. So those are the types of controls you have with the Rhodes itself before you get into, and you've got some effects, you know, sends there as well, you can get into it. Before you get into this crazy stuff, which really gets away from any kind of a authentic Rhodes sound and into something that's highly affected but really creative. That's nice, that's a favorite. So it's all over the place. And as we made mention in the other review, to sort through this enormous number of presets, they've got this tagging system, which makes it really easy to make sure that if you only want to be dealing with sort of more normal acoustic sounds and not any of that crazy stuff, you can go, okay, I only want something that's natural and is simple. So good chance that this is going to be stuff that kind of only is Rhodesy without getting into too much modification. tons of stuff. So that's the Suitcase 73. Now, as a part of the Hammers and Waves, there's also a Whirly. We're not going to deal with the Whirly because we're just comparing Rhodes really right now. But it's the same idea. So strengths about this particular one is the huge variety of presets that really use the Rhodes more as a tonal source to create all of these other presets, which could be used for production, just set your ear in a different direction. It's almost instant. None of those presets are just kind of thrown together. Every single one of those is really nicely considered, and using this tagging system makes it very easy to find as well, at least the kind of the universe you want to be in. If you don't want anything too crazy, you can just narrow it down, or if you do want specifically crazy, easy to find that as well. There is a good variety of tones that you can get out of here because of the enormous combinations of all of these effects you can throw on there, and the fact that the core instrument has been recorded so nicely. However, if we continue our little journey on, and let's actually move straight to Keyscape, because Keyscape would be the one that is kind of most closely resembles this. But Keyscape gets into a whole other world. And where Keyscape is, really excels is how authentically they have recorded such a wide variety of these instruments. And so you're not going to find a lot of synthesized or modulated effects on here. What you are going to find is every conceivable recording permutation and normal onboard effects permutation that you could possibly think of recorded through a Rhodes. And the recordings are lush, they're detailed, they pick up every nuance, every perfection and imperfection of these instruments. And so for people seeking out the ultimate in authenticity for any one of these things, it's got to be Keyscape. I've never played anything that delivers anything as lush and literally makes you think that you're sitting right next to the instrument. Just great. And it has, instead of just one instrument as its tonal source like you get in the Hammers and Waves, I believe there are 11 or 12 here. So the Yamaha P70, the Whirly's there, but even just staying within the Rhodes, you've got the Classic Mark I, the LA Custom E, just some phenomenal variety. And then once you get into it, they've got all of these different kind of studio settings. And the bark on these, on the Keyscape stuff, is also for sure the most authentic I've heard. Because not every key is identical, which is what you get on the real thing. On all of these, you've got the ability to apply the effects. There's some level of settings. You've got tonal control. You've got main. So the whole point of Keyscape is trying to put you in front of the real thing as closely as possible. It's almost a similar type of experience to me as what Vienna Symphonic Libraries has done with their Synchron to an acoustic piano experience. They're getting as close as software can to putting you in front of a real acoustic piano with the maximum amount of control over how you experience that instrument, either in real time as a player or in post if you're doing, you know, mixing and taking a track and really trying to form it to a particular mix or sound or whatever it is. So that's what Keyscape is all about. Rather than taking you into the world of synthesis and augmentation and affectation, this is just ultra pure and about as authentic and as detailed as you can possibly get. When we get into Pianoteq, Pianoteq is trying to do the same thing. The main difference with Pianoteq is, of course, the Pianoteq is not sampled. This is actually a modeled source. And so with modeling, everything is synthesized. And because it's synthesized, and the whole, I guess, thing with Pianoteq is they give you control to virtually all aspects of that algorithm, the theory is you could kind of do anything you wanted. You'd have the ultimate flexibility. And you can certainly get some very, very pretty things out of Pianoteq. So I'm going with Vintage Tines Mark I, which is the Rhodes Mark I, because that's the same instrument that we've been comparing on the other one. Enormous possibilities when it comes to being able to get there and edit the effects. You can edit, you know, a lot of the voicing stuff here, which is really kind of more of a more of an acoustic piano thing, but they give you a lot of the same controls as they do on the acoustic piano. And you can get, with some nuking and tweaking and playing around with the mic placement and playing around with the amp simulators, some really good, authentic, gritty sounding stuff out of the Pianoteq. I am impressed. It takes a little more digging to hit those truly detailed, warm, realistic experiences that you get kind of just with one hit at a Keyscape, but it is there and it is possible. And then finally, because why not, here's the Mark I that comes default with Logic. I mean, if you were in a pinch, I think this works. The main limitation, and this is true of a lot of the Logic instruments that are included, is you have like 1 or 2 sample layers happening with these emulators at most. And so the variety of tone that you get from a low velocity range to a high velocity range is often really limited. It's usually just affecting the volume, but not really the tone. And especially in Rhodes, when you start to get up into your upper velocities, you start to get this certain attack and this certain bark to the sound. It's kind of missing here. So you're losing out on a lot of that detail. The amp simulator on the default Logic is not particularly great. You can't hear a lot of the air that you get sort of in something Keyscape, but you know, if you've paid for Logic, this is free. So it is there. You spend the time to make sure that you are playing around with your tremolo and your drive, because that is where you are going to get this thing sounding the most authentic that it possibly can. But it's still not going to be perfect. The nice thing about the emulator with Logic is that, yes, each individual one doesn't have a massive sample library, but they do have a massive variety of samples. So these are real Wurlitzer, soft, modern, funk, classic. These are all different ones. So in a way, this is kind of like the approach to Keyscape, but in a super, super light, very affordable, well, free if you've bought Logic, way. So a great variety there. So there's a roundup of 4 Rhodes plugins, all of which that I've used, and giving slightly different things. For truly, potentially replacing a great real Rhodes in a studio environment, I think Keyscape still takes the cake here. I think the way in which they've recorded these instruments captures such an amount of live detail and realism around not just the instrument, but the mechanics of the instrument, the amplifier, all of those little nuances and imperfections, and as I said, imperfections that sometimes makes a real playing experience what it is. I think that for using Rhodes as a creative tool, as a writing tool, I love what Hammers and Waves has done, and I like this as well on the acoustic side. The Rhodes on its own in there is good enough that if that's all you had, you'd still be in great shape. But the presets send your ear in such a huge variety of directions, creatively, for purposes of production, for songwriting, just for having fun. I mean, it's like a million color palette, just waiting for you to run with that, using the Rhodes as its kind of base, as its main starting point. And then Pianoteq, which can't be forgotten. It doesn't get mentioned much when people talk about Rhodes emulation, but if you get in there and you find a preset that's close to where you're at, and you especially if you're super familiar with what a real Rhodes can give you in a studio setting, the guts are there to deliver a very close experience to what you can get out of Keyscape. The part where it becomes super tedious is you'd almost have to make sure you had the pro level of Pianoteq so you could get in there and get individual note editing happening, so that you could create some of those very, very slight differences in performance from note to note that gives you the sense that you're in front of a real instrument and not this robotic perfect instrument. Hope that's helped. If anyone was really wondering what was out there, or was wondering what some of the leading tools that you might want to be checking out is there, those are some of my favorites. Thank you so much for checking the channel out. We really appreciate you spending the time to learn a little bit more about these instruments with us here. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and hit that notification bell. My name is Stu Harrison, and we'll see you again soon.